Good afternoon. If you ever need proof that size isn't everything, just look at Gibraltar. It is barely more than a bump on the underbelly of Spain. This limestone monolith measures just a measly 6.8 square kilometers. And yet for centuries, empires have fought over it with the kind of intensity usually reserved for gold mines, oil fields, or family inheritance disputes at Christmas. Napoleon famously called Gibraltar the padlock of the Mediterranean, a gateway so strategically placed that whoever held it could, in theory, control access to the entire sea. So let's take a whistle-stop tour through time to see all of the different competing powers who have laid claim to this rock overlooking the entrance to the Mediterranean. Gibraltar's strategic significance goes back over 3,000 years. The ancient Phoenicians and later the Carthaginians recognized the rock as a landmark at the edge of the known world, what the Greeks called the Pillars of Heracles. And when the Romans arrived, they built a presence in nearby Cartea, but they left the rock largely alone. They treated it as a natural sentinel at the edge of empire. Now, in 711 AD, Muslim forces under the Berber general Tariq ibn Ziyad arrived at the rock, and at that point, it was renamed Jabal Tariq, the mountain of Tariq. And that's how we get the name Gibraltar. The Arabic for mountain is Jabal. Tariq was obviously his name, the general. So Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar, Gibraltar. And now you know. Jabal Tariq marked the beginning of Islamic rule in Iberia, which lasted for centuries. The Moors fortified the rock, leaving behind the imposing Gibraltar castle, parts of which still stand today. I don't know if they will tomorrow, but they do today. In 1462, the Spanish reclaimed Gibraltar from the Moors and remained part of the Spanish crown until 1704, when it was seized by Anglo-Dutch forces during the War of the Spanish Succession. Britain formalized its control in 1713 in the Treaty of Utrecht, and Spain has never really got over it. The Great Siege of Gibraltar, 1779 to 1783, was perhaps the most theatrical of all efforts to retake it. Thousands of Spanish and French troops surrounded the rock by land and by sea, starving out the British garrison, firing cannons, building floating batteries. But the rock proved remarkably good at resisting. The British forces under the siege on the rock responded by digging tunnels through into the limestone and popping out behind enemy lines like a game of imperial whack-a-mole. And the tunnels still exist, by the way. You can go and visit them. You can walk through them. You can imagine the smell of sweat, gunpowder, stubbornness. It wasn't just a military strategy. It was a triumph of ingenuity, terrain, and sheer bloody-mindedness. Britain was not letting go. Spain and France tried a total of 14 times to wrestle Gibraltar back from the British, but never successfully. It's a curious thing watching empires trip over a pebble, but Gibraltar wasn't just any pebble. It was the perfect piece of real estate in an age when naval dominance meant global power. From the rock, you can see both Europe and Africa, the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. If you stand on the upper ridge and you squint in the right direction, you're basically staring at centuries of human ambition compressed into a panoramic view. And the more people tried to reclaim it, the more the British dug in. And they've held sovereignty over the rocky outcrop in the most peculiar way. Not with high-ranked, highly decorated generals, not with state-of-the-art warships or land-to-air missile destroyers, but with monkeys. You might think I'm joking, but I'm not. Pretty much everyone knows about Gibraltar's Barbary Macaques. But maybe you don't know their pivotal importance to Britain's claim to the rock. The Barbary Macaques of Gibraltar are Europe's only wild monkey population, and they've been living on the rock for centuries. No one really knows exactly how they got here. Some say that they were brought over by the Moors, others suggest they arrived by ship from North Africa. Anyway, over time, people stopped wondering where they came from, and these monkeys shifted from just being some curious wildlife to becoming something much more, a national symbol. And in addition to stealing iPhones out of unzipped bags, these monkeys carry a legend. The legend is that Gibraltar will remain British as long as the monkeys stay. No monkeys, no empire. Fancy protecting an empire, and arguably the most important singular bit of rock in Europe, with some wild monkeys. Have the British lost their marbles? I think the answer has to be yes. We're an oddly superstitious bunch, and this isn't the only example of superstition dictating sovereignty. Perhaps the best-known other example is in London itself. Superstition has it that if the ravens ever leave the Tower of London, the crown will fall and Britain with it. And the superstition dates back all the way to the 1670s, when John Flamsteed, who was the first astronomer royal, complained to King Charles, who was King Charles II at that point, that the ravens were interfering with his astronomical observations from the Royal Observatory, which at that time was in the Tower of London. And apparently Charles II replied that if the ravens leave the tower, the kingdom will fall, and so he removed the astronomer instead. Well, the superstition stayed, and in World War II, the raven population at the tower dropped down to just one due to bombing raids. So Winston Churchill ordered his staff to immediately bring in more ravens and clip their wings so they can't leave the tower. Churchill must have been a very superstitious man, because when he heard that Gibraltar's population of Barbary apes had begun to dwindle while Europe was caught in the throes of the Second World War, he didn't laugh. He certainly didn't ignore it. He did what any sensible, military-minded wartime leader would do, and he ordered more monkeys to be imported. Fresh macaques arrived on military transport from Algeria and Morocco. Royal Marines were stationed here to look after the monkeys. In some accounts, the apes even received rations. Because in Churchill's eyes, the rock was not just a military asset. It was a myth made real. And myths, when fed and believed in, can be stronger than fact. Of course, the monkeys don't care about borders or treaties. They roam where they like. They steal tourist sandwiches. They occasionally bite the odd diplomat. In fact, they've caused so much mischief that in 2008, a group of them had to be exiled for antisocial behavior. Just think about that. Monkeys deported for hooliganism. That is the most British colonial story imaginable. But their continued presence says something about Gibraltar itself. This is a place where legend and law intertwine, where the political becomes personal, and where a symbol, a monkey, a tunnel, a flag, can carry the weight of centuries. But it also raises a deeper question. What makes a place truly belong to someone? Is it the flag flying above the fortress? Is it the language spoken in the streets? Is it the mythology of monkeys on the cliffs? Spain still claims Gibraltar. Every now and again the debate flares up. But the people who live there, Gibraltarians, they tend to be unequivocal. They vote overwhelmingly to stay British. They speak English and Spanish with equal ease. They celebrate multiple religious holidays. They mix Genoese, Moorish, Jewish, British traditions into this cultural stew that defies easy definition. But if you take the 1967 referendum, 99.64% of Gibraltarians voted to remain under British sovereignty with self-governance. In 2002, another referendum, this time on whether they should share sovereignty with Spain, was rejected by over 98%. In both cases, the message was loud and clear. Gibraltar is not just a strategic outpost or a colonial leftover. It's a community that has forged its own identity from the jumbled remains of empire. And that identity is often expressed in small but meaningful ways. Red post boxes, English-style pubs with tapas menus, Union Jacks fluttering beside Moorish architecture. The streets are layered with symbolism, with history and quiet defiance. Even the local dialect, Llanito, is a hybrid of English, Andalusian, Spanish, and Genoese. It's got a handful of oddities that have just been picked up along the way. And the Great Siege is still commemorated every year with parades and cannons. The tunnels are lit for tourists, and the stories retold in school books and museum tours. So let's open the portal and take a look at Gibraltar for ourselves. So this is the port. Relatively simple. We're going to be going off probably A deck, just straight onto the pier. And then you've got this shed-type building on the other side of which is a long road. You can get a taxi from here if you would like to get a taxi up the road to the town. And in Gibraltar, you can pay for your taxis on card if you would prefer. Here it is on a map. That is the entire territory of Gibraltar on the map. The line that you can see, the grey line running around it at the top. On the other side of that is Spain. And locals will hop across that border like they were going round the corner to go to the shops. Some people do go around the corner to go to the shops in a different country here. Some people go up to Marbella where the beaches are nicer. Some people come and shop in Gibraltar where it's tax-free. We're going to be where the ship is, at the very end of the port facility. And then it's about a 30-minute walk to get into the main town centre. Largely that's one road. Most of it you're walking along the port facility where it's got a clear sidewalk, very safe to walk along. And at the end of that road, you get to Ocean Village. When you see Ocean Village, you know you're almost there. You're going to cross over the road and you get this big battlement area, fortification. You go through the arches and then you're in the heart of town. All right, let's start on the rock itself. Hop in the Gibraltar cable car and in just 6 minutes you'll be whisked up to the top of the rock. Views so good that it almost makes you forget the apes sizing you up for snacks. Up here it is full adventure. You can stand on the glass-bottomed skywalk if you've got the nerve. You can wander through the old military paths along the cliffside Mediterranean steps. And the Barbary Macaques, they roam freely and cheekily. So do hold on to your hat, hold on to your sandwiches, don't tempt them. It's part wildlife encounter, it's part fortress, it's part flying lesson for your vertigo. The views stretch across from Spain right the way across to Morocco, and you've got those stories just layered beneath your feet. Before we go into the next highlight, I just want to go back to those apes, these wild monkeys, because every single time we call in Gibraltar, somebody returns to the ship with a gash out of their arm and is straight into the medical center. They are wild animals. Don't taunt them, don't tease them, don't encourage them to come close to you, because you don't know what they're going to do. These are not tamed at all. They are well-trained pickpockets, and they are not friendly. And so they're best viewed from a comfortable distance of 1 meter or 2 meters. If you get into their space, they might get into yours, and they have claws. So, now that we've visited the highest point on the rock, let's head to the southernmost landmark, which is Europa Point Lighthouse. It's where the land runs out and the sea takes over, and you've got the Atlantic rolling into the Mediterranean right before your eyes. And it was built in 1841. It is still in use today, and it stands proudly at the edge of an empire. It's a proper postcard moment if ever there was one. On a clear day, you can see Morocco. It's just 14 miles across the water. It's windy, it's a bit dramatic. It's absolutely perfect for pausing and pretending you're in a Graham Greene novel. I would recommend driving there. I don't think many people will want to do that as a walk. It is a long walk. So, if you're after tales older than even British post boxes, then pop into the Gibraltar National Museum, and that is not a photograph of the Gibraltar National Museum. I forgot to put a photograph there. Tucked into the Old Town. It's a cracking little place. It covers everything from Neanderthals through to naval battles. You'll find Roman artifacts there, relics from the Great Siege. There's a Neanderthal skull on display. But the real gem is downstairs. A surprisingly well-preserved 14th century Moorish bathhouse. It's been there long before the Union Jack ever showed up here. It's the sort of museum that's just the right size. It's interesting but not overwhelming, and it's perfect for a mooch if the weather's playing up, or just if your legs need a bit of a break. That's more like it. Okay, just a short stroll from the cable car station. So if you've been up the rock, you are now coming back down on the cable car, you could pop into the Gibraltar Botanic Gardens, which are also known as the Alameda Gardens. A proper little oasis here. Originally laid out in 1816 for off-duty soldiers to relax. Today, it's a peaceful spot full of shady paths, exotic plants, the odd tortoise plodding around. You'll find everything here, from cacti to jacaranda trees. You've got great views if you head up the hill, because this is a hilly park, but it's also home to a little open-air theatre, a small wildlife conservation park too. So whether you're into plants, just a quiet breather from the monkeys, this is a lovely place to just take things at your own pace. Right in the heart of Gibraltar's Old Town, the Cathedral of St. Mary the Crowned is easy to miss, but it's worth a look. It's the territory's main Roman Catholic church. It was built on the site of a former mosque after the Spanish took back the rock from the Moors in 1462. And over the years, it's had more makeovers than a reality TV star. But inside, you will still find a calm, quietly grand space with a mix of styles. Locals pop in for a quick prayer or a cool break from the sun. It's not flashy, but it's full of character and it's full of history. But if that is the cathedral, what's in Cathedral Square? Well, that would be the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity, which is Gibraltar's Anglican cathedral and a fine slice of colonial architecture. So this cathedral was built in the 1830s. It looks almost Moorish from the outside. It's got these horseshoe arches, but they're just a nod to the rock's Islamic past. Inside, it's all calm woodwork, stained glass, a slightly nautical feel, which is fitting for a place that is so intrinsically tied to the Royal Navy. And it's still a working church, so there may well be something going on, but you're very welcome to step inside and have a look around. And these two religious sites are far from the only ones worth exploring in this really very tightly packed destination. There are at least a handful of synagogues, and there are mosques as well. It's amazing to see so many different cultures all calling this unique little space home. And it's a nice reminder of Gibraltar's history, blending faith, empire, architecture, all into one really, really compact space. So tucked into one of the old bastions, it's near the Upper Rock, so a bit of a climb to get there, is the Military Heritage Centre. This is a must for anybody who's curious about Gibraltar's wartime past. It's housed in Princess Caroline's Battery, and it is packed with artifacts from the Great Siege, from the World Wars, and Gibraltar's long history as a fortress. You'll see uniforms, weapons, even the original 100-ton gun shells, proof that this little rock meant big business. It's not flashy, it's honest, it's well laid out, it's surprisingly moving in places, and it is a great stop if you're already exploring the Upper Rock. Ideal for those who like their history loud and explosive. And this is the Moorish castle. Often they just call it the Casbah, just like they had the Casbah today. And it's been keeping watch over Gibraltar since the early 8th century, which is when the Moors arrived. What's left today is mainly the Tower of Homage, which is a solid, slightly weather-beaten structure that has seen more sieges than most medieval castles could dream of. Its battered walls tell a story of centuries of back and forth power struggles, and from the top, the views across the Bay of Gibraltar are worth the climb alone. You don't need long here. It's cracking when you get there. You just imagine what life was like for this place when it was at the front line of empire-building ambition. Amazing. St. Michael's Cave is Gibraltar's underground showstopper. It is a stunning natural grotto filled with dramatic stalactites and stalagmites, and they've all been theatrically lit for effect. It's been impressing visitors since the Roman times, but it was during World War II that it was prepped as an emergency hospital. Never had to be used, thankfully, but these days it now hosts everything from tours to concerts, and it's got surprisingly good acoustics in there. Now, the main chamber, well, I think it feels like something out of a fantasy film. It is cool, echoey, and it's properly jaw-dropping. It's a really nice break from the sun, but it's also a reminder that Gibraltar isn't just oppressive above the ground. The rock's got some secrets hidden inside it, too. And let's end where I think you're going to spend most of your time. Main Street. Main Street is Gibraltar's answer to a classic British high street. Think Marks and Spencer's, we call it M&S, red post boxes, pub lunches, but then all with a Mediterranean breeze. And it runs straight through the old town. It's lined with shops selling everything from duty-free electronics to Union Jack souvenirs. And at the entrance, you'll find Casemates Square, which is a lively spot for coffee, people watching, the odd parade. The cafes there have Wi-Fi. And if you don't fancy the walk, if you don't want to go that far, then Ocean Village near the port is another nice, breezy alternative. They've got good restaurants, bars, a modern marina vibe. So whether you're after bargains, you want a pint in the sun, Gibraltar's shopping scene covers both of those ends really nicely. Let's put all of those highlights for you on a map. I would say that the key way to see Gibraltar from above in this sort of map way is if it's green, it's higher. So they've built on the lower part of the rock, very densely built in, and then the rock itself has been largely unbuilt on. It might have been built into, but not onto. And so if you want to go and see that side of things, you're going to be either going up the cable car, getting a taxi up there, because there are roads that will take you up, or indeed hiking up if you feel like the hike. So we started talking today about Napoleon's padlock, and we've talked about Churchillian pranksters as well. But there's one part of Gibraltar's story that really ties the two together, and it's not what you see on the surface, it's what's underneath. Because if Gibraltar has a secret superpower, it's this: the ability to disappear. Disappear. It's a huge towering rock that even the ancient Greeks, all the way on the other side of the Med, knew about. You can see it from Africa. What do you mean, disappear? I mean, Gibraltar has the most incredible ability to disappear underground. Now, some countries build cathedrals, some build opera houses. The British, they built a maze of military tunnels into this massive limestone cliff. Nothing says welcome to the empire like gunpowder storage and sneaky back entrances. And this was centuries before modern machinery. This was during the Great Siege back in the 1770s. The British realized they couldn't defend the northern face of the rock with regular cannon placements. So they came up with an idea that was as brilliant as it was bonkers. Dig into the rock and mount the guns from the inside. And this was how the first siege tunnels were born. Soldiers blasted and hacked their way through solid limestone, mostly using hand tools, gunpowder, and sheer grit. The goal? To create firing points where they could surprise the enemy and hold off the siege. And it worked. The Spanish and French didn't stand a chance, and the tunnels became a part of Gibraltar's identity. Part fortress, part foxhole, part psychological game of hide and seek. Now fast forward to the Second World War, and the British did it all over again, but bigger. Expecting a German invasion through Spain, which for the record never came, engineers extended the tunnels to over 55 kilometers in total. That's almost twice the length of the roads on the surface of Gibraltar. They could house 16,000 people inside. That's not a tunnel network, that's an underground city. They built hospitals, kitchens, power stations, even a water distillation plant. Some of it's still classified, or at least it's left off the tourist map. I mean, it's not often that you find a place with a secret plan to vanish underground and wait out a world war, but here we are. With a real twist, they also had a contingency plan called Operation Tracer, and this one is straight out of a spy novel. The idea was simple. It was also terrifying. If Gibraltar fell to the Nazis, a small team of British spies would be sealed inside a chamber overlooking the harbour. From there, they'd observe enemy movements through tiny slits in the rock, and they would radio back that information. And they would take enough food and water to last for 1 year. And there was no exit. Once sealed in, the team would be buried alive and working. But they were selected for psychological toughness, and they were given cyanide capsules as well, just in case. But they were trained to live in darkness and silence. And here's the kicker. The operation was so secret that no one knew if it had actually happened until 1997, when explorers finally found the sealed chamber. It was real. The room was really there, so was the observation slit. Let's let that sink in for a moment. In Gibraltar, you've got stories that sound like novels. They sound made up. And then 60, 70, 80 years later, they turn out to be true. That's the magic of the rock. While Winston Churchill was busy ordering in monkeys and clipping the wings of ravens, someone else was designing an invisible spy room in a limestone cave with a year's supply of baked beans. That was the British Empire for you. Half prestige, half pantomime, and yet standing firm in the face of all the odds. The padlock and the prankster. One part that's deadly serious, one part that's utterly absurd, but both working in tandem. The padlock reminds us that this tiny stretch of land has shaped the course of European history, not just once, but again and again and again. It's been the chess piece that no one could afford to lose, the gatekeeper of the Mediterranean, the stage for siege warfare, Cold War paranoia, and Churchill's rather unconventional wildlife policies. The prankster, or the monkey, the legend, the tunnel digger, that's what keeps it all human. Because for all our strategy and military bravado, we're creatures of the story. We need myths to make meaning. Even in a place as strategic as Gibraltar, it wasn't just the guns that kept it British. It was the theatre of belief. The belief that monkeys mattered, that a tunnel could hold off an enemy, that a man in a sealed room could outwit the Third Reich with a radio and a crack in the wall. In the grand contest of empires, it's tempting to think that power lives in brute force, in navies, in treaties, in battalions. But I think Gibraltar tells us otherwise. It tells us that sometimes power hides in strange places, in legends, in tunnels, in stubborn islanders who say no 14 times and mean it, or in a monkey breaking into a car looking like he owns the place. And maybe, just maybe, he does.